This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Karen Anderson. She is Director of Curriculum at the Wise School, which is working in conjunction with the USC Rossier School of Education. And your focus has been on gifted education strategies. And the reason I want to speak with you, Karen, is because there's been a lot of focus in the public school system on children that may be English language learners, disadvantaged, foster kids. And I've always thought that's important, but a bored gifted kid could be as tyrannical as a bored challenged kid. And so I wanted to talk to you about the gifted kid and whether that gifted kid is getting lost.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the word bored is fascinating, and it gets used by teachers, it gets used by parents, it gets used by kids, and we always are trying to dig into what does that word mean.
Right.
Does it mean I'm not interested in the content? Does it mean I'm not being challenged appropriately? Does it mean I'm not being allowed different kind of opportunities for my learning? Does it mean I actually can't read, but I'm interested in the content?
Right.
You know, there's a lot of different things going on with that word. So at USC, with Dr. Sandra Kaplan, we do a lot of work around how do we meet kids where they are and challenge them to go a little deeper, to go a little farther.
And what can be frustrating too is, and you've told me this and I believe you, just because someone is EL, English language learner, or disadvantaged or a foster kid, that doesn't mean that they are behind grade level or challenged. They could be gifted.
Of course. And there are a lot of different types of identification in gifted. So in the public school system, kids are identified first by their teachers, right? So the first step in identification would be a teacher noticing certain characteristics, traits, attributes in a child and doing a checklist. And then that paperwork would go to the school psychologist, would go to another level to maybe get tested. So there are many kids that are falling through the cracks because the teacher is not necessarily trained to see the characteristics of gifted in a child who maybe can't read or maybe, doesn't speak English clearly. And I have heard teachers in schools sometimes say, well, that child can't be gifted because he doesn't speak English. And it always hurts me desperately.
I can imagine. And you had been at LAUSD prior to joining the Wise School.
Absolutely. And I worked in a bilingual Spanish class. So I identified many children based on their thought process, their critical thinking, their quantitative reasoning.
Yeah, could you talk to us about that identification? I know we have all of 6 minutes or 7 minutes left, but I do want to get a sense of what that looks like because I'm always amazed. I have friends who may be first grade teachers, and I say, can you tell what's going on by first grade? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, there's also, like I said, there are different kinds of identification. So sometimes you might have a kid it seems very obvious because their ability to, calculate numbers is above and beyond. Or you might have a kid who their oral language characteristics are really strong, right? They're able to articulate and retain a lot of things, and they're able to remember and bring it back around and use words in the right context.
What I've always found interesting is there was this notion if you're an early reader, you're gifted.
No, not necessarily.
And if you're not an early reader, you're not gifted.
Yeah.
And
we have many kids who don't read right away, especially maybe not in English, who can identify as gifted based on many other characteristics, based on the way that they see the world, the way that they make meaning around the world, and the way they make connections between themselves and the world.
So at Wise, which is an independent school, I understand that you're looking to try to adopt certain strategies for children that are gifted, or maybe not necessarily gifted, but can benefit.
Right. So our curriculum is based on the work of Dr. Kaplan, who I've worked with for about 10 years.
From USC?
At USC, yes. And we there are layers to this curriculum. So we look at the content and we layer in these other attributes. So we layer in looking at universal themes and big ideas with the content. We layer in thinking like a disciplinarian, taking on the hat of, I am a chemist. What are my tools? What is the language that a chemist uses? What are the skills that chemists use? And what are the products they create? So not just looking at the content in chemistry or doing this one experiment, but saying, I am a chemist. So looking at thinking like a disciplinarian. We look at critical thinking skills, and we try to make connections between those skills across the content areas.
One thing that I notice, and this is going back into the ancient days when I was in school, it felt like in order for a child to be classified as gifted, they needed to be a strong generalist. So they needed to be strong both in math and in English. I'm not convinced that if you are weaker in one, stronger in another, you still can't be gifted, whatever that means.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's about meeting kids where they are and taking them to the next level, no matter where that is. And it's also meeting kids in their interest base. So you might have a child who is extremely gifted in math. So how do you connect that to broader concepts in science and technology and engineering and history and current events to make them connect and see through that?
It's funny,
and see that those skills are used in all content areas.
And I'll just use myself as an example. You know, I was identified early on as a gifted math student. You know, and my English skills were fine, but my math was gifted. The minute I hit advanced math, I fell apart. And the minute I hit advanced math, my English skills took off. And when I've asked people about this, they said, oh, that's not uncommon. So there are certain brain types that are very good at the kind of the basic math. You hit advanced math, you're doomed.
Well, that's kind of a whole nother topic of conversation, which we could go into, that has to do with the way that we've taught math in this country over time, that you and I were taught math versus the way we're trying to go forward with math.
But that brings up an excellent point, which is, so talk to us about 21st century strategies.
Right. So 21st century, when they say 21st century, it's about learning the skills to be able to be productive in jobs that we don't know what they are yet, right? So that means knowing how to make connections, knowing how to prove with evidence, knowing how to defend an argument, knowing how to reason abstractly and quantitatively, knowing how to model in mathematics and in language, being able to describe what something is in multiple modalities.
I know that you're focused on an independent school, but I'm sure you're familiar with Common Core.
Absolutely.
Do you feel as if Common Core, which is a public school concept, is moving public school students in that direction?
So let me be totally honest.
Please.
Common Core, I have no problems with Common Core. I think the Common Core standards are, a lot of things that are in the Common Core standards are just basic things that good teachers have been doing for many, many years. The big shift in Common Core is in secondary education. In primary education, it's very paralleled. The difference is that it asks for more of those 21st century skills. It asks for more collaboration. It asks for more critical thinking. It asks for more creativity. In the language arts standards, in the math standards, it asks for what is known as the standards of mathematical practice. And that's some of those skills I was talking about. So it's about depth over breadth, right? So, which is really important, which goes back to the conversation that we were having, that we were taught breadth and we did not know what we were talking about. We didn't know that 4 times 2 meant 4 groups of 2 of something in life. So we just learned the fact.
Are these gifted education strategies looking for that, am I saying, the depth as opposed to the breadth?
Absolutely. It's going deeper and deeper and deeper. So when we talk about acceleration in gifted, we're not talking about you're in 3rd grade and you're doing 4th grade work. We're talking about taking a concept and accelerating it out to a broader place. So I might look at, in kindergarten, I'm looking at cars, right? I'm looking at cars and different types of cars, and I'm categorizing cars. Well, some kids can take that to, I'm looking at vehicles. So now I'm looking at cars and boats and trains and other types of vehicles. Okay, great. And I'm looking at all of these different things, and I can compare and contrast, which is a critical thinking skill, right? And I can categorize, which is the critical thinking skill. But then some kids can take that to, I'm looking at systems. And all of these different vehicles, which are also,
you're great.
Have different systems that are interrelated.
I get it.
And they have systems that are common, right? And, oh wow, but you know what? Not just vehicles are systems. Math is a system.
She is Karen Anderson. She is the Director of Curriculum at the Wise School, working with the USC Rossier School of Education. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.